Here we go again, take two. Okay, you can see my Google slide. Yes?
Okay. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So, good morning. My name is Cami Gergely, and I live in Singapore, and I work for one of the international schools over here. I have been working for them for the past 19 years and taught in this international school, in elementary school in all grade levels. I have spent the majority of time teaching English as a second language. I've taken over the role of Singapore chapter almost 2 years ago. And just like you, I'm looking forward to attending future face-to-face LSAT PDs to enhance my knowledge and teaching skills. Thank you for joining me today. Today's talk is intended to be interactive so that you also have the opportunity to share your own perspectives and experiences. The reason why I chose this topic is because it is a great tool that we use in the classroom on a daily basis with our students. And I like to learn as much as possible about it to enrich my teaching practices. Hence, it would be great if we could share your thoughts later on during the sharing segment. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. What is translanguaging? According to Professor Dr. Ofelia Garcia from the Research Institute for the Study of Language in Urban Society of New York, translanguaging is about communicating, not about language itself. It is the use of the children's full linguistic repertoire to make meaning without thinking of the fact that they have one language that is different than the other. So bilingual children have one language system with linguistic features that are associated with one language or the other. But they are also learning to suppress certain features depending on the communicative situation in which they're at. Translanguaging is also a way of teaching, a pedagogy that builds on those fluid language practices that bilingual children have. It also allows them to read in one language and then discuss it in another, or read in another language and write in another. So a way of using all linguistic resources in order to make meaning. Translanguaging is not random, it is strategic. It is meaning making, and it has to be planned for it, just like you would plan for your language content, or translanguaging objectives, while thinking of what strategies to use, how to design your classroom space featuring the language of your children attending your class. For example, you might have children from China or Japan or Sweden, with, of course, some flexibility depending of their language ability, in which case you will have to adapt how you introduce and teach English. So translanguaging promotes really a deeper understanding of subject matter, such as conceptual understanding, by discussing in one language and writing in another. Students will always reference what they already know from their first language when working with a second language. Translanguaging really supports students' bilingual identities and social-emotional development. Hence, it is important right from the beginning to know your students' backgrounds really well, such as their English level, their cultural identity, what their hobbies are, so that you can plan meaningful and age-appropriate relevant lessons. Now, what does translanguaging mean to you? Take a moment to think about it. How do you implement it in your classroom if you already do? I created a short list, or longer list, that contains possible resources and strategies to use immediately in the classroom tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but Monday, as I am happy to email you if you wish to have this list. And it will be featured in the next few slides as well. So do send me an email after the PD, and I'm happy to share with you my list. Now, who really coined the term translanguaging? Where there's this guy from England called Sen Williams, and the term translanguaging was coined in the 1980s by Sen Williams and applied in Welsh, wait for it, as CE2. I'm trying my best here. It's not easy. In his thesis titled An Evaluation of Teaching and Learning Methods in the Context of Bilingual Secondary Education. Now, this term really stems from the Welsh word translate, also interestingly pronounced as caveata. So I really worked hard here to learn how to pronounce these difficult words, like your students would. Now, Williams used the term to describe the practice of using two languages in the same lesson, which was different from many previous methods of bilingual education that try to separate the languages by class, time, or day. However, the dissemination of this term, of the related concept, gained traction decades later due in part to the published research of Ophelia Garcia, which I have presented right from the beginning, in the beginning of this presentation, the talk, among others. So she was the first one to publish a lot more work using the word translanguaging. Well, let's have a look at the past and present timeline that shows how translanguaging has really progressed over time. So as you can see, here's a simple timeline that shows how the viewpoints of learning a new language changed over time. As you can see, in the past, the children were not allowed to speak in their mother tongue at all and in the classroom, as it was considered as language contamination. So just have a quick look to see how, and read the little passage on the left side of this slide, if you can. Take a moment or two. And so all these assumptions run contrary, looking at the present, all these assumptions are really contrary to Cummins' linguistic interdependence hypothesis, which you're familiar with, written in 1979, which has shown through a multitude of corroborating studies, which happened in 2017. So the development keeps happening, that academic concepts and linguistic skills like reading transfer from a student's L1 to additional languages they are learning. Therefore, Cummins advocates for language learning classrooms where L1, L2 similarities and differences can be explored side by side to make cross-lingual transfer more effective for L2. As you can see, there is a little figure right there that shows you Cummins' interdependence hypothesis. All right. Now, before we move on to exploring some useful strategies and look at resources that can be implemented in the classroom on Monday, I would like to wrap up the theoretical part of this segment of what translanguaging means. And just so let's have a quick look at the video. Can you hear it?
The first time I heard a description of translanguaging, I was like, what? No way. What is this crazy idea about mixing languages and letting the students use whatever they want in the classroom? I'm a university-trained language teacher, and my whole methodological background was founded on the principle of target language in the classroom. After extensive research and study, I realized that it isn't as crazy as it sounds. The crux of pedagogical translanguaging is accepting that languages can work together in the classroom rather than in competition, and teachers can plan strategically for students to use two languages for learning. There are many strategies teachers can use to integrate translanguaging into their classrooms. The first basic structure I train teachers to use is to vary the language of input, processing, and output in a learning cycle. An example. Imagine you are teaching a history class with learners from diverse language backgrounds. You allow the students to gather information on the topic in their own languages and then bring them together for a group discussion in English about what they have learned. Then they work separately to write a story in their own language and come together in groups again to rework the stories into English. In this way, they are building their learning through one language and transferring it to the other, a powerful cognitive strategy. And in the process, they are improving their academic skills in both languages. Translanguaging is an indispensable strategy for bilingual classrooms. It can also be used very successfully in multilingual classrooms. Translanguaging pedagogy is different with younger and older learners, but is beneficial for all ages. Implementing a translanguaging approach requires an openness to innovative practice as well as professional development and coaching. But to see it in action is to clearly understand the significant benefits for learners in terms of their own language development, their English development, their content learning, and their social development.
Okay, so as you can see from this video, there's no more language contamination type thought. We have moved on from that, and we are using translanguaging a lot more successfully. And the research does prove that it is a method that is successful. Okay, so we move on to the next slide. These are some of the strategies and resources that I've put together for you. That you could literally implement on Monday. I'm sure you have your own resources, and I'm sure as you have your own resources, it would be great to share them if possible. I can send around a Google Doc, and we could share in the future as well. This is the whole point of the talk, to share ideas and perspectives. So some of the resources and strategies include a survey. As I did mention that the students' well-being is at one of the focal points in our teaching. I put together, one of those student surveys that I use with my students, asking them what they like, what they dislike, very simple questions so that I can get to know the student very well in order to support them properly. I also put together bilingual dictionaries for every single topic of study that we do. I use e-dictionaries like we all do, from Google Translate to Quizlet to Britannica to Nice Translator, which is an instant multilingual translator. We use same language buddies in the classroom. We have multilingual word walls. If there is a new topic, then I send the information at home, and parents, as you know, are a great resource as translators. Use translanguaging to activate prior knowledge, using mind maps, what the kids know about it. So that kind of helps me in my planning. Lots of visuals around the classroom definitely helps, as well as scaffolding, a lot of video clips, gestures, act it all out. And we are lucky at Overseas Family School to have 14 different mother tongue teachers from 14 different language countries, and so we are using them as a resource in the classroom as well. And so let's move on and have a look at how we apply translanguaging to research topics. Typically, in most BYP schools and other international schools, grade 5 students celebrate their learning journey and showcase their knowledge, skills, and understanding of what they've learned with expo presentations towards the end of the year. Expo presentations are based on research topics that typically last for about 6 weeks. So before I go into more details, let's explore Giovanni's case. He recently moved from Italy to Singapore. He was sad about leaving his family and friends behind and moving to a new country. He was nervous about his new school and not being able to communicate, with everyone or anyone. In time, he made friends, he made stronger connections with his teachers, he learned functional English words and slowly became happier and more confident at school. I'm sure this scenario sounds familiar to you, doesn't it? I'm sure it does. As we all work with students from all around the world. So how does translanguaging help students like Giovanni with his research projects? Well, before we even begin to do anything, in my opinion, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, it is important to assess individual abilities and the student's English language proficiency so that we're all clear about the level of understanding of each child. Once we've established that, we need to ensure that we're incorporating meaningful resources that are culturally and age appropriate. It is highly important to get to know each child as much as possible and to be able to connect with them. So to find out what they like, what they dislike, what their hobbies are, and so on and so forth. It is essential to integrate social emotional learning with academic development so that each child feels represented, valued, and included. Once you're familiar with your students, consider some of the following questions before planning for your lessons or research project. For example, how does the topic connect to the real world? What is its objectives? How does it improve the academic success and class attitude? How will you tackle challenging discussions that might arise? Is the topic engaging? Is it age appropriate? What tools, resources, and strategies will you use to help your students gain a thorough understanding of the topic? So let's move on to a case scenario. So here are some examples of my students' work from our expo, a grade 5 expo that included a great example of how translanguaging comes into action. How did this journey of the expo start? Well, here are some strategies that, what are some strategies that I implemented using this? Well, firstly, the parents were briefed about the topic and its key points shortly before we even started the topic, so that it's very clear what the children will be facing in terms of vocabulary, main idea, and key points. Then we used Quizlet and other translanguaging devices. Like I mentioned earlier, we used the same language buddies, bilingual dictionaries, all the word walls were up, video clips were ready to go. And our topic of study was making things go, which was about renewable versus non-renewable energy. Well, once the children understood the main idea, the big question, and the learning objectives in groups, they started working with mentors. Like I said earlier, mother tongue teachers were our top mentor on the top mentor priority list. And they embarked on their learning journey and started gathering information about their chosen renewable source by using this kind of template that guided them step by step. Remember, scaffolding is very, very important for the ESL children. This is an example of the learning journey. As you can see, translanguaging has been put into practice, and each and every child expressed their ideas in their mother tongue, ideas that were eventually translated in English in preparation for their presentation. What are some strategies and resources that were used through the process? Well, translanguaging happened continuously and organically before and during the entire process. With the help of their parents and the same language buddies, we used library books, bilingual books, Britannica. They were able to finally put their presentation together. It was a long and arduous process, and it took an entire village, so to say, to complete it successfully. And throughout the process, the students' well-being, inclusivity, and social emotional well-being remained a focal point. When the expo time came, the children were ready to present in both English, their L2, and mother tongue, L1, on request to their peers from other classes or grade levels. Their final presentations were offered in English, Chinese, Japanese, Italian, and Hebrew. And by the end of the 6 weeks, it was evident that they have mastered the topic, and our audience was pleasantly surprised how well they understood the topic and collaborated really well to create incredible presentations in a language that was completely foreign to them less than a year prior to the expo. And so this couldn't have been successful as it was if the students wouldn't have felt supported, settled, interested, and engaged and included right from the beginning. I would have probably liked to show you a video of the children's presentation. However, we do have a strict privacy policy at school. So that's the reason why I've only included a few photos of the presentation boards instead, but hopefully they will give you a good idea what it looks like. So the topic chosen was relevant, meaningful, engaging, and impactful. Its success proved the importance of the connection between the social emotional well-being and academic development. And we believe it or not, we're at the end of the presentation, and I tried my best to keep you on time. Now we have a little bit of time for questions. Feel free to type them or email them to me in case we are running out of time. Gentle reminder to send me an email after the PD if you would like a copy of the teaching toolkit that was presented today. So right now it is your time, and I will stop sharing the slideshow. So yes. Do we have any questions, or would you like to share any thoughts? The floor is all yours.
Yes, Camelia, first, thank you for the presentation. Actually, I'm a PhD student from Saudi Arabia, and I joined your seminar from Twitter. I was searching about translanguaging because it's my PhD topic.
Wow.
And I found the session very useful because I'm thinking about designing a lesson with the students, and then investigating the teachers and the learners' perceptions about translanguaging in the AFL classroom. But could you please go back to the slide where you shared your email? I forgot.
Sure. I am actually typing it in the chat right now as we speak.
Okay, thank you. Great. I would appreciate sending the strategies that you mentioned about.
Yes, I will definitely. Yeah, just send me an email, please, and I will be more than happy to. Wow, PhD. That must be very time consuming. But
yeah.
you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It was great.
Yes, do mention me in your PhD. No, I'm kidding. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, most welcome, Iman. Very beautiful name too. Any other questions? We have a couple more minutes before we move on to the next talk.
Just one, Cami. Yeah. Hi, hello, everybody. Thanks very much, Cami. I work at the same school as Cami, so I've seen her in action and working with the kids. So thank you very much for today, Cami. It's very good. I also just to add on, not a question, I guess, just to add on. When the kids get an opportunity to ask questions at the end of their presentations, I remember kids could ask questions in their first language as well, which is, I think, a fantastic thing, and the kids could answer, do a Q&A in their own language as well, which is good.
Correct. Yes, that's right. So, and the presentations were offered in either English or their mother tongue, as we had children from, let's say, even Saudi Arabia. We did have children from Israel, from Italy, from China, from Japan, from Korea, and they were able, and the option was given to them to listen to the presentations in their native language.
Thanks, Kemi.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, no? Okay, well, I have typed up my email address. Thank you, Iman. I am going to copy your email address and send you the strategies. Okay. If anybody else has, yes, please, just in case for any reason, these email addresses, because I've received a few email addresses, can you please email me instead, because I might not be able to copy and paste all of them. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining my presentation. I hope you have taken some ideas from today and implement them on Monday. And I would be very interested to hear your ideas as well. I will create a Google Doc and make it available on the ELSA website in one of the little corners somewhere. I will have to figure out where, but I will. Okay, thank you for your time. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye now.